Hello everybody, this is Dumpster Cat, here with another edition of the Tireless testing series. In this one, we will be up against humans in Pioneer, which is a very popular deck at the moment, and I believe it is a very strong deck, very powerful deck, so we need to be ready to be placed up against it. From the last video, I have only made one change. I have taken out the Deathrite Shamans and added 2 Bloodchief's Thirst, just because I think aggro and midrange is are very prominent in the meta right now, and I think Bloodchief's Thirst complements our other removal spells quite nicely. Obviously, Fatal Push, Decay, and Trophy. I like Thirst alongside the Trespassers, as having more removal means getting in with our Trespasser more, as Trespasser is going to be your best threat at the moment. Sideboard is the same. The other 58 cards are the same, and so I hope you enjoy the video and the games. Okay, so we're on the draw in game 1 with a keepable hand, obviously nice mix of lands and spells, just what we want to be seeing in BGX midrange. I like having the Siphoner in hand just as the added card advantage, plus the tracker is very nice, and then Abrupt Decay obviously being a nice flexible removal slot. So we keep. They play an Iganjo, which obviously means they're white. Most likely they're going to be an aggressive deck because most white decks are aggressive in the format. So we draw Liliana, start with our Blooming Marsh, and then pass the turn. On their turn they do play a Godless Shrine into a General's Enforcer, which makes me think one of two things. Firstly, they're obviously going to be on a heal-win strategy. Secondly, most likely a bit of an atypical human strategy, where they're going to be focusing more on legendary humans than just regular humans. So with keeping that in mind, we're going to untap, draw a land, and then we're just going to Abrupt Decay right now. We don't want any added value with them getting any indestructible clauses on their other creatures. We could obviously wait till their turn, but we could obviously, playing the Decay on our turn plays around cards like Brave the Elements, and so I just wanted to be very clean with our removal, just get rid of that on our turn. They play a Mox Amber, which is quite interesting, obviously goes very well alongside their legendary creatures, and then they'll play a Thalia, another land, and just pass. So obviously the Thalia being quite nice here, this allowing us from playing Liliana of the Veil. Obviously this would be the perfect scenario of, turn 1 we kill the creature, or I guess it would be turn 2 kill the creature, then turn 3 they play just, one creature, then on our turn 3 we get to Liliana Edict, and then keep a Liliana in play. That would be the best case scenario. However, we are just forced into pushing the Thalia, passing to them on the next turn. They play a General Kudro, which is a very good card, but thankfully for us, they do not have any other creature follow-up, so we're just going to jam the Liliana right now, minus, and then play our tapped Overgrown Tomb. And by this point, we're just sitting very nicely. They play a Joyra, which is a bit uncommon, however very nice alongside their Mox Ambers, which they do have, and their other legendary creatures. Thankfully, however, they do not have another creature. I thought they, perhaps could have had another creature with, double Mox Amber being able to float 2 mana. However, they don't. So we just plus our Liliana, discarding a Lane of Rural Wastes. And then what we could do here is play our tracker, play a land to get the clue off the tracker, and then play our Siphoner directly thereafter, getting a lot of nice board presence, a lot of nice value set up for future turns, and we're in a pretty solid slot as long as they're not able to get too crazy with this Joyra. And so we see they have a Halana and Alina, which is a pretty impactful card, is able to make their creatures very big and then give haste to those creatures, so a pretty powerful threat. They play another Mox Amber, which is another draw for them. And so they increase the power of Joyra. They attack our Liliana, so we could either allow this to go through, or we could chump block with just our Siphoner. And so we do decide to chump block just because I think we really need the added value of Liliana right now, being able to control our opponent's board and hand. So I think Liliana is just a bit too important. Also, we're probably not going to be attacking too much with their Siphoner either, anyways, just because they are an aggressive deck, and Siphoner is, not well positioned against aggressive decks. So we just play a land. We drew Kalidas, which is just an all-star in any aggressive matchup. So I love drawing that. And then here we actually cash in the Liliana of the Veil, which may seem a bit strange. However, my theory is that we can make them obviously sacrifice a creature, get in for some damage here, and then now we're quite ahead. We have two clue tokens on the battlefield. We're actually ahead in life total, which is pretty important in aggro matchups. And we have Kalidas to really control the board and just end the game pretty quickly. So on their end step, they don't play anything, which is pretty good for us. And then we just are able to crack a clue. And then we draw a trophy, which is really nice. And so here we first crack a clue to see if we are going to draw a more efficient removal spell, such as a Fatal Push, which would be better than playing the trophy on the Joyra. And however, we just draw Liliana, which is actually probably even better than a Fatal Push. Obviously not as mana efficient, but still being able to edict our opponent and then keep the Lily on the battlefield, attack for a bunch of damage, is just gonna force our opponent to wrap it up there, and then we win game 1. Alright, so for sideboarding, against aggressive decks, I feel pretty good. Obviously, with our sideboard, we're a bit more efficient against the aggressive decks, because I do feel like aggressive decks are this version of BGX Midrange's weakness with our Tireless trackers and our Liliana of the Veils. We're not as aggressive and we're more value oriented, so we're a bit weaker against the aggressive decks in that way. However, we do get some pretty nice inclusions from the sideboard. Obviously, our 3 Wrath effects are going to be premium against this Humans deck, with Witch's Vengeance being the all-star, or the most efficient threat, or a card that gets rid of their threats, I should say. Additionally, we may want to bring in Noxious Grasp, because they did have some white creatures with I believe it was called General's Enforcer or something like that, and then General Kudrow. So we can bring in possibly 1 or 2, and I do like Courser of Krufix up against the aggressive decks, because she acts as a great blocker and then a great way to gain life thereafter. In terms of the cards that we don't want in, obviously do not want the 4 Thoughtseizes. We want to keep our life total as high as possible, and so Thoughtseize is not going to be doing that for us. And Thoughtseize is just not like the most efficient card that we can cast against them. Not the most proactive card, I should say. And so that leaves us 2 slots to get rid of, and then I believe I just got rid of 2 trackers. No, actually, I'm sorry. I got rid of 1 tracker and then 1 Siphoner. Actually 2 Siphoners and then 1 Gargaroth came in as well. I forgot Gargaroth was in our board, but yeah, Gargaroth being obviously just a great inclusion in the matchup, and then get rid of 2 Siphoners plus 1 tracker. Obviously, as I said in the game 1, Siphoner's just not that good against aggressive decks. This is a very aggressive card that you want to be attacking with each turn, and you're not really able to do that against creature-based strategies, of course. And then Tireless Tracker, just probably a bit too slow, but I still like having access to her, just because, as we saw in that game 1, if we're able to land her with removal spells and cards like Liliana of the Veil to support her, she's able to take over the game very quickly. Okay, so we're here for game 2. Kind of like against Dimir Control, I love our game 1 interactive capabilities. However, going into the post-sideboard games, I think we have a lot better chance of winning the game with our added removal spells. And so we have a opening hand of 5 lands and 2 spells, which is not really acceptable. Obviously Fatal Push and Gargaroth being cards we want to see in the matchup, but just, this combination is not really acceptable. So we do have to mulligan to a better hand. It's a bit cluttered on 2-drops at the moment. However, if we're just able to put back 1 Scooze and then keep the Witch's Vengeance and the Siphoner, we're looking pretty good. So we just put back that 1 Scooze. We're going to be on the draw again. They, fortunately for us, have no turn 1 play. If they had an aggressive turn 1 threat, then we perhaps could have been in trouble, just because our removal is very kind of clunky right now. With Trophy, you don't really want to cast Trophy on the early turns, and then we also want to kind of perhaps wait for our opponent to cast more creatures and develop the board more. So our Witch's Vengeance and then now our recently drawn Extinction Event are going to be more impactful. So it's a bit clunky in terms of the removal, but fortunately they did not have a 1-drop. However, they do have the General's Enforcer once again. We draw another Extinction Event, which is good in the matchup. However, we're pretty desperate to draw some lands. And so here my first instinct was to play the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, just because it's going to be aggressive. We can, if they play another creature, we can trophy that 1 creature and then still be able to attack with her. So it's like, okay, this is the most value-oriented play. However, after thinking about it for a little bit, I opted to go for the Scooze just because Siphoner is actually a human, and so we would obviously want to be naming human off of Witch's Vengeance, so I thought that just getting at the Scooze instead of the Siphoner would have been more impactful, because I do believe, or my theory was, okay, the best outcome is we're going to be drawing a land next turn and then just getting a 2-for-1 with the Witch's Vengeance, and then clearing the pathway. So it's like, okay, Siphoner's just not going to do that job, and Scooze is going to be the better option. And so they play another land, of course. Plaza of Heroes being a premium land for them, being able to tap any mana for legendary cards. And they play a Lagrella, which is pretty impactful, kind of like a Fiend Hunter type of card, or I guess like a Banisher Priest, and then it could grow, exile any number of other target creatures, and then when an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way, put 2 1/1 counters on it. Interesting. So they can exile their own cards, but obviously they're just going to go after a Scooze. And so we're really hoping to hit a land, and we fortunately do. If we did not hit a land, then we would have been in a pretty tough situation. We could have trophied the Lagrella to get back our Scooze, but still, would be feeling pretty bad there. However, fortunately, we're able to get out this Witch's Vengeance and clear the board and then get out our Scooze, which is really, really nice, really, really nice. Then, on their 4th turn, they play this Jaren, Corrupted Bishop, which gets them 2 bodies, which is pretty good, can make their humans have lifelink, and then has a pretty nice upside of, although, pretty uncommon. I don't think they would activate this very frequently, but could be a pretty insane threat later on. And so we're just going to untap. We didn't draw a 4th land, which is a bit unfortunate. However, we're able to trophy the Bishop, and then we're able to attack. They don't block, and then before it blocks, we're going to get rid of the Lagrella in the graveyard, growing our Scooze, getting us some life, and then right now in a really nice position. Obviously we don't have our 4th land, but with the Scooze in play, with our opponent having lots of creatures in the graveyard, and now because we attacked, we have the life advantage, feeling really good about where we're at the moment. And so they play a General Crudro, which is pretty good, pumping their token creature. They're able to exile one of our cards. They attack for 2. And then Sorry, that kind of moved quickly. We drew a Scooze, which is not very good. However, we are still able to trophy the General Kudro. Thankfully, they didn't have the mana or the 2 humans to potentially kill our Scooze, so we just get in there for 4 damage as we're able to exile the General Kudro before damage. And then they're at 10 life, which is pretty low. So they just draw Thalia, which is not very good. We draw a Liliana of the Veil, which we're not able to cast, unfortunately, because of the Thalia. But we attack, and then we're just gonna pump our Scooze up once, and then play out the Siphoner. Just being really aggressive here because we have the life advantage. They're at 5 life. They decided to not keep back the human token to chump block the Scooze, and so I was like, okay, you know, let's just add as much pressure as we can and close this game off really quickly, as we often do want to achieve against most decks. They draw this Catilda card, which is not too relevant right now, thankfully. And even more thankfully, we drew our 4th land. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually attack first, see how they block. And they're just going to block the Siphoner and chump block the Scooze, which makes sense. They're doing what they can. And so we kill, we don't kill anything because of the first strike. And then what we could do is play out the Liliana of the Veil and Edict away their Catilda. And they're just left with only 1 creature, and then if they don't draw another creature, then they're just forced to chump block with the Thalia. And so I felt that was like the most impactful play there. However, they do draw another creature in the form of Jaren, and they give Thalia lifelink, and they attack the Liliana and gain 2 life, which is pretty good for them. However, we're just pretty efficiently able to decay the Jaren. We could have actually, Extinction Event is off the board because of the Thalia. But thankfully we did draw a removal spell, so we got the Jaren off the table, and then we're able to attack with the Scooze. And then now we're in the same situation as we were last turn of threatening the chump block with the Thalia. And they draw a Joda, which is very, very insane. Probably the big, most scary payoff they have access to, giving a big pump to all their legendary creatures, and then gaining value thereafter whenever they cast a legend. So that's really scary. We, on end step, activate our Scooze. Fortunately enough for us, however, we did draw the 5th land, so we're able to Extinction Event on Odd, getting rid of this Joda. And then, as I said before, this is the ideal situation of us attacking and then them needing to chump block, or else they're dead. And then they drew for the turn. Obviously they probably didn't draw a creature as they conceded. Alright, so although that match was up against a deck that was not too metagamed, in the sense that it's not the typical mono white or even 4 or 5 color humans deck that we typically see, it was still a general. I wanted to release this video because it was a general deck, a general aggressive deck that a mid-range deck like us needs to be kitted against. And so obviously with this game, with this match, we're able to see how good our mid-range deck is up against an aggressive deck like that. We did have some pretty lucky draws and some pretty nice progressions that lined up very good against the aggressive deck. So obviously take this video with a grain of salt in that sense. However, we have some really nice options main deck to get rid of these pesky aggressive decks like Kalidas, obviously, like our just such efficient removal with Fatal Push, our Abrupt Decay, and Assassin's Trophy. We have, I believe, better removal than Rakdos midrange in the form of the Trophy and Decays, and we're better able to use cards like Liliana of the Veil and cards like Glint Sleeve Siphoner, even Evolved Sleeper is pretty nice, and we're able to flex some really power powerful late game cards like Tireless Tracker, and even some big beaters like Garrick, Cursed Huntsman in the board, and Elder Gargaroth as well. Although, you know, Gargaroth, Courser didn't really come up in the sideboarded games, we still had some pretty relevant play with some of our other sideboard cards, such as Witch's Vengeance and Extinction Event, which is very nice. I am really actually pretty impressed by Witch's Vengeance recently. A lot, if not all of the aggressive decks in the format right now are going to be tribal based. So we see humans, obviously, with its, I guess 3 variations with mono white, 4 color, 5 color, and that legendary archetype we just saw. So we have humans, spirits, goblins, elves, just a wide variety of aggressive decks in the format that Witch's Vengeance is very good against. I kind of see this as a pioneer plague engineer, or a plague engineer at home, I suppose, would be a better term for this card. So I'm really up on this card. I actually, in my current version, I'm playing 3 in the sideboard just because I think it's that good, alongside the 2 Extinction Events, because as we saw, EE was really, really nice. Not engineered explosives, unfortunately, but Extinction Event has been really nice for me, and is also very good against other decks such as Mono Green Devotion. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you learned something new, and I hope you have a very nice day. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.